I'm going to read out a report from the Independent. It's not too long, so I'll ask you to bear with me. The reason I read out these whole reports rather than just talking about them is so that I don't miss out any details. I'll comment a bit about it afterwards, but please just hear this out, then talk a little bit about it. This is from the Independent newspaper yesterday. Kafkaesque ban on man entering street decried by judge. A father of 6 got home from work to discover he had been barred from even entering the street where he lived with his family for a decade, in a case described as Kafkaesque by a High Court judge. Mr. Justice Jackson said the man at the centre of the family court litigation, whom he named only as Mr. R, could have been forgiven for feeling like Joseph K., the protagonist in Franz Kafka's 1925 novel The Trial. He returned home from work as normal on a Friday evening in June, and was served with an order obtained by his wife that day, which forbade him from entering the street where they had lived for more than a decade. He was not told about the order in advance, and had been given no chance to challenge it. Detail of the case emerged in a ruling by Mr. Justice Jackson, who sits in the Family Division of the High Court in London following the latest round of the litigation. No one involved was identified. Mr. R's wife, named by the judge as Mrs. R, consulted solicitors and complained that she was the victim of domestic abuse. A deputy district judge subsequently made an order at a family court hearing which Mr. R knew nothing of, and which could not have lasted more than 5 minutes, barring him from entering the street where he lived. Mr. Justice Jackson had raised a number of concerns about the litigation and said 11 steps in the legal process had been wrong. The judge said Mr. R had tried to challenge the order, but because of an insignificant procedural failing, his complaint had not been heard. He said court powers had been used in a draconian fashion, and said at one point Mr. R was even detained by police for a minor infringement of the order. He was arrested for an innocuous breach of the original order to which he pleaded guilty without receiving legal advice, and in consequence acquired a criminal record, Mr. Justice Jackson said. And as if that were not enough, the effect of the original order was to deprive him of contact with his children for fully 5 months. All in all, Mr. R could be forgiven for feeling like the hapless protagonist in Kafka's The Trial. The judge said the order barring Mr. R from entering his street should have been made, and he said a judge faced with an application of which one side was unaware should always begin by asking by asking why not. Mr. R was given no effective opportunity to challenge it within a reasonable time, he added. The court's case management powers were then used in a draconian way that compounded the injustice to an unrepresented party. Mr. Justice Jackson said he had allowed Mr. R's appeal and set aside previous orders on the basis of the errors made in the legal process. Now, I don't know if this is a one-off, and I don't know if it was a case of administrative error in the legal process, but this is very troubling, that a man would be barred from his own house for 5 months, denied access to his own children for 5 months, based on an allegation from one party, from his wife, that he hasn't even had a chance to defend. This is a case of only one side being heard. Now, I don't know the situation. I don't know if he was guilty or innocent. But either way, I staunchly believe in the principle of innocent until proven guilty. And I don't think it should be a case of one party's simple word being able to have an action over somebody. Now, domestic abuse, I don't know if that was shouting or domestic violence. If it was domestic violence, just to be clear, I have no sympathy for men who beat their wives, if that was the case. But I also have no sympathy for the idea that somebody cannot have their view. I believe in every legal case there should be a fair process. Clearly in this case there was no fair process. This man was punished for 5 months without even having a chance to defend himself, without even knowing without being given any notice. This is disgraceful. There's no word in the report about what he done for 5 months, i.e. where he lived. Presumably he would have had to go to another relative, or, well, I don't know if he was homeless for that period, but this is worrying. I mean, conceivably you could have a situation where any couple has an argument, and the woman, and it will be the woman, gets angry, and in an immature fit of rage then gets a sort of order out against the man. And I say it will be the woman because clearly in these cases there is anti-male bias. No way would a woman be going through that. No way. So clearly there is sexism in the court system, which feminists conveniently ignore, but that does overwhelmingly impact men. If he was guilty, then they could have used evidence against him in a court of law, tried him and charged him. But to ban him from his own house before he's even had a chance to have legal counsel is disgraceful. And it doesn't even say that he was arrested. This isn't a case that the man was arrested for domestic violence, which I'd have no problem with if there was evidence, but it's a case that he's simply barred from his own house. That's a frightening situation. To go home and you're just barred. I think it's an utter disgrace that that was allowed to happen. It's good that the High Court Judge Justice Jackson has exposed this case, but it does pose the question: how common is this? Was it an isolated case, or has it happened? Is it happening more often? If it's happening more often, there needs to be a serious review of the legislation that is in place. And I remember not so long ago, there was a similar order, I believe it was in Worcestershire, that in terms of domestic violence allegations, whereby the police would have the power to prevent a man from entering his own house, and again, only men. There was no word that it would also apply to violent women. And just to be clear, this is not about sympathising with men who are guilty. I'm talking about the principle of innocent until proven guilty, and to me this seems frankly sinister and shamefully unfair. Shamefully unfair. That's not a fair system at all. I mean, for this man to be blocked from his own house for 5 months, a house he probably paid for, I don't know. Of course the silence from feminists will be deafening. Maybe it is an isolated case, but regardless, it's disgraceful.